Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morganroth, Motor City Madmouth, and I am really excited about the broadcast we have set up tonight. I have Mark Littell wearing the St. Louis Cardinals hat and our baseball analyst on the broadcast. Thanks for being back, Mark. Appreciate it.
I'm happy to be back. It's fun to be on your show for sure. Thanks, Scott.
You're welcome. And I have to introduce for the first time, and hopefully a lot more, my colleague with the Miami Marlins, Joe Frisaro. And when Joe and I met in person just a matter of a few weeks ago, I got a little surprised that he's a former Tampa Tribune writer. So you have two Tampa Tribune alumni guys down here in South Florida. You want to talk about a small world. Indeed, that is, when Joe and I were talking about the people that we knew. Oh, so Joe, thanks for being on the show tonight.
Oh, Scott, enjoy it. And first, I can give a little love to the Jupiter Hammerheads. The Marlins I'm wearing represent the Hammerheads there with my shirt, the low A ball team for your Miami Marlins. But yeah, I mean, when you're talking Tampa Tribune, we've outlasted the paper, which is dissolved several years ago, but a legacy of tremendous journalists that are still out there in the industry, and was proud to be part of it.
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of common people that we talked about. I felt bad when we were talking about it. I felt like you were, I was stopping you from getting your work done at the game. But, you know, when you dropped the names out that we were in the era that we were, and of course we worked for Tom McEwen as well. Tom McEwen by far and away was an unbelievable sports editor, and, you know, rest in peace, Tom. But, you know, we have a lot of things to talk about tonight, so we're going to talk a lot of good quality baseball. And we're going to lead off, since the word lead off is the appropriate word for the sport, with Derek Jeter being in the Hall of Fame. Now, I know he was inducted, Joe, in 2020. I believe they'll have the ceremony in 2021 at Cooperstown. So, well, we know, but the big question pertaining to the Hall of Fame is Don Mattingly, okay? I want each of you to provide me with an opinion on that. Joe, do you feel that Don Mattingly belongs in the Hall of Fame?
Oh, Scott, you put me on the spot because I've known Don for several years and covered him. And on the personal level, I have the utmost respect. And like everybody, and I'm from New York originally, and, you know, even though I was working at the time when Donnie was playing in his heyday with the Yankees, you know, his career was, you know, he was a legendary baseball figure in New York. And, you know, it seemed like the longevity, although he did play 14 years, became a factor with Donnie baseball and, you know, in terms of his peak years. But there was a run where he certainly was, you know, he was the MVP of the American League in 1985. You know, his resume speaks for itself, batting champ and so forth. That, you know, now it's in the hands whether Donnie's a Hall of Famer or not. And yes, on a personal level and, you know, a bias level, yes, I think Donnie should be in the Hall of Fame. I almost wonder if they feel there are too many Yankees were in there. I also think the sports writers' criteria in the day was more basic numbers, close to 3,000 hits, 500 home runs. You know, those type of barometers seem to matter a lot more than the voting public today. But the Veterans Committee still could make that call and maybe combine his managerial mark as well.
Mark, what's your take on that?
Well, he played 14 years, and that's not a real long time, you would say, for Hall of Fame material. But, you know, obviously he did some damage in those 14 years as well. He carries himself well. Of course, he's a Midwest guy from Evansville, Indiana. He probably swung in a bunch of corn stalks. That's probably what got his swing down. And but he, you know, he's been around. He's got a name. He does a really good job of holding a club together. You know, I hate to combine that, you know, because if you look at guys like Jim Cott, he's got 280 something, you know, and he's not in the Hall of Fame. You've got the guy from Detroit, the left-hander, you know. Olich. There's another one. You got those two guys right there. I mean, they've got eons of years in there. You know, Kitty Cat had 26 years. He's a personality, you know, on air as well. He's a baseball man. Of course, you've got, you know, Simmons and Marvin Miller going to be inducted at the same time. And I think Ted is going to do the induction part for Marvin Miller, which is good because Ted's been around baseball so long. He's been in the trenches as a coach. He's been in the trenches as administrative as well. General manager, farm director, whatever else. But to get back to Mattingly, I don't know. That would be a tough call for me. It really would be.
I mean, when I looked at Don Mattingly's numbers and compared them to Kirby Puckett's, let me just give you a little tail of the tape here. Kirby Puckett, 318 average, 2,304 hits, home runs 207, RBI 1085, and 6-time Silver Slugger, 10-time All-Star, 1 batting title, a 10-time All-Star, 6-time Gold Glove. And then Don Mattingly's are just comparable. I'm not trying to make a case that, one's numbers are better than the other. I'm just saying they're comparable. I want to make sure the word comparable is where I'm going with all of this. Mattingly, for instance, 307, average 2,153 hits, RBI, home runs 222, RBI 1099, 3-time Silver Slugger Award, 6-time All-Star, 9-time Gold Glove Award, AL batting title as well. They both do. And of course, he ends up edging out Dave Winfield, with a 343 average, went 4 for 5 when he won it versus what Winfield did. So when you look at the tail of the tape with the two, and I'm talking about numbers relatively close, that's where I think Don Mattingly gets the edge for me to get in the Hall of Fame. And yes, Joe, you're right. It is in the hands of the Veterans Committee. Hopefully he does. But I will say from a selfish standpoint that when I went to Cooperstown, New York, and I bought a $350 Hydrostone statue, then I can tell you right now that when Don Mattingly, should he get in the Hall of Fame, my statue will be worth a lot more money if I ever decide to get rid of it. So he's a Hall of Fame person too, Joe. You and I have obviously worked with him for the better part. So
I mean, Donnie is for a superstar player that he was, whether Hall of Fame, we could debate that, but he certainly was a star, and he was he had a persona, he had a swag about him back in the 80s, the mustache, the whole, the way he carried himself. And he's the most unassuming former star. One of the few, and I've covered in 38 years as being a professional journalist, among the most humble, most unassuming, superstar guy. Like, I don't think players that play for him, some of them, are really aware of just how good he was, as a player. And Mark, I'm going to bring this up to you because I'm looking at Donnie's stats right now. But the one, especially in the era we're playing right now, and you being a former pitcher and all, 444 career strikeouts in 77 plate appearances. He never in a season struck out more than, I'm looking, like 43 times. That's that's a month for some of these guys right now. Yep. And it's like it just shows. And as as a pitcher who knows how hard it is to strike guys out, or was, speak to that. Just the strikeouts of the era you pitched in from a pitcher standpoint to now, where guys are just bringing 100 and
Joe, it's a different swing. They've got the uppercut a little bit. They want the home run. They want the power. You're going to get more strikeouts, less walks. Mattingly was a pure hitter. He worked at it. He studied it. He took advantage of the whole field. That says a little bit about the 220-something home runs, where it wasn't the 300. He took advantage of the whole field. He had some pop, but and he made use of it, I'm sure, when he needed to, when he thought he could, do a little damage. But he was a pure hitter. He put the ball in play. He was like a Carew. He was like a Brett. He was that type of a guy. Because when you say those numbers, that says he does put the bat on the ball. You don't want to come up there and have him, with, go ahead tying run on second. You just don't want him up, And
how would you pitch him? Would you go in? Would you go away? Would you go soft? Hard in, soft away? What would be away? Would attack him?
You just try to get ahead first, and then, I always like personally guys to swing because you like to read their swing, and once you read their swing, it helps. I said helps, and then on a guy like that, as of all big hitters, you change speeds a little bit more on guys like that. I mean, not that you don't throw your fastball. You can't hardly throw a fastball by good hitters anyway. But if you have them set to a point and you're right on the plate, maybe the umpire will give you the corner and you'll get the out. But, those guys are students of the game. It's like Tony Gwynn, who was an exceptional student of the game. He studied tapes, he studied films. Mattingly was the same way. I'm sure the Yankees had everything that they needed for any of their players to, try to give them that edge. And, you still have to hit the ball. A lot of people, you're sitting there talking about Cole. They were talking about, Boone wanting to say something about, loading up a baseball or whatever. And the pine tar thing. And I mean, we all do pine tar back when I was playing, only because we have to hang on to the ball because the balls are so rubbed up, sometimes they're slick, and especially on the West Coast. And now you've got Arizona and it's all dry. But, you still need a little bit of something to stick, and you don't need a lot. And, it doesn't make the ball move or anything. And, these guys nowadays aren't smart enough to figure it out to make it move because, one, they throw too hard and the ball doesn't move as much. That's another reason, because I have a lot of friends that are pitching coaches. Myself, I was a pitching coach and a pitcher, obviously. But, the harder you throw like that, that ball's going to come in straight and it's going to exit out just about the same speed.
Yeah.
Joe, you bring up an interesting point that a lot of players don't even know the history of the game. I think a very interesting example, when you mentioned a lot of his players don't know what Don did, but it's one thing that really stands out to me is I'm covering Detroit Tigers, Tampa Bay Rays game, and I go up to Mike Maroth at the time, and he didn't know who Mickey Lolich was. And then I went up to Troy Percival, and then he said, really? He doesn't know? Let me tell you, Troy Percival went ahead and really kind of stuck it to him a little. Said, Troy, this is Mickey Lolich. Get with it, kid. It just that really boggles me when you really understand how much today's players don't know about the history of the game that they're playing at.
Yeah, and I'll go back a few years because I was on the Marlins for a number of years, and Tony Perez and Andre Dawson were special advisors for a number of years. When Derek Jeter came on, they moved in another direction, but you would have in spring training and in batting practice regularly, you'd have two Hall of Famers just in the dugout or around the cage to talk to a young Giancarlo Stanton, a young Christian Yelich, even before that, a young Hanley Ramirez, some of the hitters, a young Mike Lowell. They were around them, and to have that what do they call it, the institutional knowledge around there, whether it's just pointing something out as very subtle. Whether it's in their swing, but they obviously didn't want to step on a hitting coach or his program, but they could be a sounding board and they could be a reminder. And I do wish the Marlins are obviously Mark's wearing a Cardinal hat and the history the Cardinals have. The Marlins need to do a little better of bringing their former players and getting them around the program, around the players, just as sounding boards to let them be there and say, hey, this guy in 03 helped win a World Series, or this guy in 97 helped win a World Series, or this guy threw a no-hitter at one point, or this guy had a 3-home-run game at one point. Something that reminds these players that, the sport, has been around and has been an amazing sport for over 100 years because of passing down the institutional knowledge. And, I saw someone tweeted this out, and I think Mark will appreciate this. Somebody tweeted out the other day, I wish I could remember, it might have been Buster Only. And it was a minor league team, I think, and they were playing Pepper. And they said, that's how players used to play Pepper to warm up or when they're, just to get those hand-eye, and that just helped them. And I don't even know how many players even know what Pepper is right now.
Right. Yeah. That's true.
All right, so Joe, I have a question directly for you, okay, and then I'm sure Mark can chime in. What are your thoughts about the job that Don Mattingly has done as a manager in Miami?
Oh boy, I mean, when he got hired in 2016, he got hired with a young team that was expected to win. It was a Jeffrey Loria who had, great, he has the deep New York ties and wanted and always kind of get the Yankee players or the Yankee. He wanted to make a big splash at that time. The Dodgers were kind of falling a little bit out of favor with Donnie, that relationship, and they mutually parted ways. And the Marlins had just kind of, kind of a disastrous 2015 season when they fired Mark Redmond, their young manager at the time, and replaced him with Dan Jennings, who was the GM. And it created Mattingly went from a situation of having to manage a team expected to win to a team that had lost a popular, one of the young faces of the sport, an ace that's irreplaceable. And next thing you know, they gave him the 17 season. Stanton won the MVP, but they fell out of it early and it became playing for numbers team. And then 18, 19 were rebuilding years. 20, the shortened season, they go to the playoffs. This year, they're kind of a hybrid. They're a little old. They're mostly young. And it's a tough, what do you expected to do? Normally a manager comes in, we're expected to win. Oh, well, we're rebuilding. And so Donnie has kind of seen all those ebbs and flows. And through it all, the one thing I can say about him is he's been a level constant the whole time, which is what anyone that knows Don Mattingly would expect. He doesn't really get too high, doesn't get too low. He's level. I think his calm demeanor helped them get through COVID a year ago. Yeah. But right now he's being challenged with it still comes down to talent, and he can't swing the bat for a team that struggles to hit, and they got so many injuries on the pitching side and young arms that need to be protected that Donnie's hands are a little tied on how he's doing that. He's taking a lot of heat now on how he's using his bullpen, but even tonight they had to use an emergency starter who got hurt in the third inning, so he has to have a bullpen cover 5 innings in a stretch of 16 straight games. So if they don't win this game tonight, is it the manager?
Mark, what's your interpretation?
I'm sure Mattingly does the best he can with what he has. And you're not always blessed with the best talent. Of course, if you do have the best talent, sometimes like the Yankees say, they don't always win. They think they have it, and that's not true. And I saw that when I was playing. But the one thing, too, about Mattingly is that you have to look at your coaching staff a little bit. It's your players, but your coaching staff helps you quite a bit. I'll bet you, and I don't know who the bench coach is, but you have to have a really good bench coach. You really have to have a good bench coach, and your pitching coach has to be able to relay that back in to the manager of what's going on. And I know they map that out well before the game, many times over. The different scenarios. This inning, that inning. This situation, that situation, we have to go to this guy. You're short now because you had to bring in another pitcher in the third inning. So and they're thinking about tomorrow's game in the 8th inning, trying to win this one because they're short, pitching. And that's like everybody else. They're short of pitching. You look at St. Louis right now, they had Flaherty go down, for instance, and then you had the Latino pitcher, he didn't live up, and they scored 10 runs off of him in first inning the other night over in Los Angeles, and that's the most runs ever given up in I don't know how many years since a Cardinal. But everybody, nothing is safe, and at the very, very end, it all comes down to pitching. And I've always said this. The Dodgers have always said this. I worked for the Dodgers for 1 year, but I knew this before I went there. They always had good pitching. They'd win 2-1, 3-2, 4-1, whatever. But they kept those runs down. They kept them from coming across the plate in their heyday. But they've always built their teams around the pitching, and that's what's going to end up at the end of the year. And it's like Joe was saying. I didn't know that. They had to bring that guy in the third inning. Well, that's going to throw something right in there in the mix. It's going to be an extra beer in the clubhouse, whatever.
Yeah, and like you say, Mark, and their roster move post game because the kid who was emergency starter, he's hurt now, so there's a roster move coming, whether it's IL or send him back, and then now you got to bring in more length because you're going tomorrow with a starter, even though it's Pablo Lopez who's been dependable, but They have Pablo on an innings limit. This year was going to always be very dicey for pitching coaches and pitching depth because we didn't have 162 a year ago. Minor league ball wasn't played. So where are the guys going to throw? They're going to throw them in the big leagues. So you're in a team like the Marlins, who have pretty good inventory in terms of young prospects, but they are going to be by August in a spot where they're going to have to ask themselves, are they going to rush a kid up who might, and Mark will tell you, it might be the best thing in the world for him, but man, if it goes the other way, normally it isn't. Normally every 22-year-old doesn't come up and just dominate. And then Jose Fernandez had that it factor at age 20, that he could do that, but he was a once in a generation type of talent in terms of his demeanor, in terms of all that went into making him a special young pitcher. But that doesn't mean everybody's got that same thing. And we both, probably all three of us, probably see many a pitcher career go the other way, because next thing you know, they got demoralized. We were talking before we went on about Jack McKeon, who Mark pitched for at one point, and I know Jack very well from managing the Marlins and being with the organization forever. There were pitchers, and Jack would tell me this: they're making a mistake, they're bringing this kid up. And I said, why, Jack? He goes, he can't throw anything but a fastball, and he's dominating in Double-A with a fastball, and then these farm directors want to look good, and these scouting directors, by getting them up and draft guys, get them up to the big leagues. So they're putting numbers up without a second pitch. They come to the big leagues, and guess what happens? And next thing you know, some of these guys may have had 1-year careers when their careers were supposed to be, they were second round pick, they're supposed to be a third starter or higher, and it never gets going. And that's the kind of part of the game I hope that the younger audience realizes. It's not all about tonight. You can win the game. Like the Cardinals lose Jack. You don't just replace Jack Flaherty. He's he's a Cy Young candidate, basically. So he goes down. You may win that game, but your mind is like, we got we got this stretch going, and how long is he going to be gone? And who do we got? And it's all that domino effect. And every time your starters aren't going 7 innings or 6 innings, they're going 3 innings, bullpen's covering 5, maybe 6 innings that night. And that math just becomes real tricky. And before you know it, when you get to August, that 5 under becomes 20 under.
Yep. I was one of those guys, Joe. I came up when I was 20. And back in the day, that really wasn't heard of. I was the youngest player in the American League, or National League, I guess. But George Brett and I were rooming together. And George was a 2nd round pick, Hall of Famer now. I was a 12th round pick, but I came out of the woodwork, and I was 9-1 in AAA by June 10th. And by June 9th. June 14th, I was starting against the Baltimore Orioles in Baltimore, and I did not go to big league camp.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Wow.
How'd you do?
I did well in that game, but we played Oakland next at home.
Yeah.
So
yeah. In those heydays.
1973, of course.
Yeah.
Oakland,
yeah. It's where they were the team. They were the team.
Sure.
And again, it doesn't, and as you know, if you're a one-trick pony, and all you have is a fastball, and you don't have a second pitch, and you better have a third pitch and maybe a fourth pitch, the way it's set up now. And I think that's where, the living for the day, sometimes you might lose a game and that's why they always talk about the value of an ace. Oh, the ace, he could go 7, 8, 9. So you're not, the day before your ace pitches, you may be able to use more bullpen arms to win that game. And then because your ace went maybe the distance even, you didn't need your bullpen that night. So they get a day off. And then so they say that ace could help you win 3 games. That's why these teams are lining up. If you could get 3 aces at the top of your rotation, that makes life so much easier. And people don't realize, yes, the Marlins don't hit great. They got a bullpen that's pretty much, they don't really have a true closer. But they're serviceable when they're not overused. And then when they get hurt, then that's when you're done. That's when you're done.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that gets lost in a lot of all this stuff is we all grew up in an era where complete games were the norm, not the rarity. And I think that's the one thing that's really sorely missed in this game. It really is. You know,
Right.
if you take a guy 7, 8 innings, you're doing good. But once upon a time, yes, there were nine. There were complete games. You didn't have to tax the bullpen, and the beat goes on and on. You just specialization is okay, but when it's too over specialized, it'll lead to some other things we're going to talk about. That to
Yeah,
me,
but if you don't have the guy, though, Scott, that's the problem. Yeah, we're with you. But you know, when you're got a rotation of four number five starters, basically, who are basically built to go 5 innings, you can't really expect a complete game. I mean, I go back, Mark, I'd like to hear what he has to say here. I think it was 2005 when Dontrell Willis had probably the greatest single season in Marlins history when he was 22-10, I believe. It's the only 20-game winner in Marlins history. I think Dontrell had 7 complete games that year. And little, that was my third or fourth year on the beat. Little did I know, I wouldn't say anything close to that. Like 7 complete games. Just think if a starter this day, and we're talking 2005. That's only 16 years ago.
Right.
It's that was nothing. It used to be 3 guys in rotation would have 10.
oh, I'm with you, Joe. Hey, listen, you
Yeah,
know what? I realize in this day and age, guys aren't able to do it. But when you see a guy like Roy Halladay, for example, throwing complete games, and it wasn't that far ago when he was doing it. It's just unfortunately where the game has evolved, where you don't see as many, whether the Marlins have them or whoever. It's just to me the complete game is such a rare entity that it's
yeah.
unfortunate. It is overall.
Verlander, for instance, I know he's going through Tommy John. He's probably at the end of his career, obviously, and maybe he will bounce back. But he was a complete game type of guy, or he was close to it.
Right.
Let's put it that way. And there's
I think
a few others as well. Not many.
Yeah, Max Scherzer jumps out to me. Right now, that he's still that bulldog mentality. That guy, because they always joke about it. It's fun to watch when Max Scherzer's when he's having his A game, and then he gets in a little bit of trouble in the 8th inning, and a batter comes out or whatever, and he's glaring like, "No, I ain't giving you the ball tonight." And the manager just goes back to the dugout. He strikes the next guy out, and then he finishes business. But that mindset. That's why. Obviously, if you pitch for the Washington Nationals and you could be around a Max, if you're a young guy, if I were a young pitcher in Washington, I'd be, just hanging on to Max Scherzer and just seeing what he's doing and hoping some of that kind of rubs off because, that mindset, that mentality, you literally have guys looking to come out of the game. You know that.
He's actually putting a little more snake oil on his arm. That's the deal.
Oh, don't worry, we got a lot of those things to get to. So let's go on to the next thing. And Joe and I are all too familiar with this because we're here. But Don Mattingly, you want to talk about viral, okay? Joe and I should know. I asked Don Mattingly a question through our Zoom calls about no-hitters, and Don went on to say that that the game of baseball is unwatchable. Now, here's what's interesting about this whole thing. Is that little over a minute or so thing got 392,000 views. Joe, wasn't it something like over 392,000 watches or whatever? Over something which, in my opinion, was a simple baseball question. So my question to you, Mark, is this. Is baseball become unwatchable now? Is Mattingly right that the no-hitters are a problem where it is unwatchable? Because he went on to say, I believe, that this has been built up over a 10 to 15-year period, right, Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the launch. We talked a little bit earlier. I was talking to a scout today who basically said these hitters now, like he said, it's getting harder to evaluate who a pro prospect can be in the minor leagues. We're talking because a lot of these people are looking for a guy who just hits the ball in the air and they don't care if he strikes out at a 40% clip. And so you're getting a one tool. It's like, how do you, if you're an evaluator who's trying to put together, a team and find winning players, that tool will either be advanced speed, a guy with the hit tool and power. Those are your $300 million players right now.
Yeah, you're not having the 5-tool player anymore. You're having the power, and the average is gone. Hitting for an average is gone. So, they had that slight uppercut, but, some of them make it just to the warning track just as well on that.
Yeah.
That's the big deal. and you've got little guys doing the same thing. But the other factor is eventually, if the numbers dictate it and they're not going to put the fans in the stands, they've got to start back to playing baseball and using the whole field and dropping bunts when they're doing the shift and playing a little bit smarter baseball to win a game or two. Especially, they got swing games, and those swing games are games that are won by 2 runs or less. And, if you win 40 swing, if you have the better of 40 swing games in a season, you're going to be in a playoff generally. So you've got 60 you're going to win, 60 you're going to lose, and you got 40 swing games. And then you got 2 rain. So anyway.
That's kind of been the mindset. Yes, what Mark said is exactly right. I've heard that, for 15 years, like all the time. But you hear that you're for the most part, you're not going to lose 100. You're not going to win 100. A few teams might go in that direction. But yeah, how are you going to dictate those winnable games? That's why the blown save becomes so crushing. And that's why you usually see that lead to losing streaks, especially if it's a really bad blown save. But yeah, and I'm watching a ton of these games, and I'm watching West Coast games, and you see a guy on, and then and it's fine. Maybe you take the first pitch, you want to be aggressive, and the first pitch of your bat, the guy on second, you may want to go for the fences or try to hit the ball in the gap. But literally 3 straight pull swing, no adjustment, really no plan, and there's no adjustment by the hitter in the at bat. You just look and it's like, what an easy out. I mean, and then some of these teams, you don't have to know even remotely a strike, because they're gonna, mostly young players will do that. They always think they're gonna get a fastball with a guy on third, less than 2 outs, and they'll swing at a breaking ball in the dirt. They won't even consider taking the first pitch. And next thing you know, they're an 0-1 hole, they strike out. But yeah, it's the adjustments in the at bats and just the lack thereof. And I've seen some minor league ball already, especially the lower levels. It's there too, Mark. That's the disturbing thing. Where you think that somebody would say, look, you're like $150, your weight, and you think you're going to hit the ball in a big league type park when you have no power. You're like 20 years old and you're 150 pounds, and your swing is like, it's so it becomes hard to evaluate that player. If that player shows no hitting aptitude, then, what do? You just kind of hope that they watch a George Brett or a Tony Gwen video every now and then, or Don Mattingly highlight reel every now and then.
You were talking earlier about, the 3 stud pitchers as the starters. So in other words, and I know Waddy would say the same thing. I've always said this: if you got 3 pitchers, studs, and then you've got 2 decent guys out of the bullpen, and then you have the closer. Now, to hear Waddy Herzog say this, he builds his team more around his bullpen closer than he does his starter. Because if you have 2 starters, maybe a third will fall in if you've got everybody in gear. But, a lot of times if you have those 2, that third young guy might fall in and have that year that is all unexpected. But those guys, then they give them a chance to go to a playoff situation. If you've got those numbers, that's 6 guys I'm talking about. That's not, 10 or 12, but I mean, that's going after games you got to win. And those 2 guys out in the bullpen, they'll give you those innings. That closer, that's going to stomp you in the ground immediately. And those 3 guys that are going to give you 5 to 7 now, I guess, 5 to 7.
Yeah.
So I guess a big thing that I'm kind of curious about, I think we kind of know that it is. So I guess I'll give you guys a yes or no question about this whole thing, because you guys have done an awesome job giving explanations. And I appreciate the thorough nature of how you responded to this question. But Joe, in your mind, yes or no, is a game of baseball unwatchable?
No, because I'm a diehard baseball person. It's frustrating, and the game does evolve, and I get it, and I get the logic. You want a bunch of singles hitters. The slugging percentage means something. It means a lot. Where it's lost is just the only swing for a big number.
Okay.
Only swing. Sometimes that, and Mark could tell you, you get a starter out of the stretch, you get him into the stretch, that could change everything. You get that changes so much. So just get a guy on base could lead to just a gigantic inning. It doesn't need to be, you don't always have to, because you get the starter out of his windup into the stretch. He may have to throw as well, or just get his attention. And next thing you know, you're putting things in motion. And look, I'm not sitting around saying yes, you need to hit and run all day and whatnot, because we all like home runs. As much as we. But I think the bottom line is you want to see the game played smartly. And that is, when we talked about, and I brought up Pepper before. Well, Pepper makes you kind of just react. I saw this one drill this player was doing, because now even how we're raising the baseball player, because I think the best way to create baseball players is to play baseball. Not, as kids, that's what I did. I grew up in New York, and we had one neighbor had a gigantic backyard, and you couldn't pull the ball, because if you did, you could hit a house. So you had to basically, if you were righty, you had to hit lefty, or even to hit the ball the other way. But we improvised, and we played and just kind of had fun with what we had. When you're doing Pepper, that. But this drill I saw on the internet was somebody at one of these, throw hard academies, on their knees, just like shuffling and throwing as hard as they can on their knees, which is fine and dandy. But when you're just going to shuffle across a baseball field on your knees throwing a baseball, where's the practicality to that? I want to see, you're the Tampa Bay Rays, who they're probably as good and bad for the league in terms of they're highly analytical, they're highly disciplined. They'll take the bullets for taking out Blake Snell in the World Series, because he was at the pitch limit. He never goes 6 innings. They weren't going to, even if he had a perfect game going, they weren't going to let him go 6 innings. They're so disciplined to that. But if anyone watched the Tampa Bay Rays take batting practice, they don't just have a coach hitting a ground ball to third baseman. They live do everything. They're pitching to the coach, who's hitting live grounders to the infielders, which is close as you could get to simulating the game. Because not every ball is going to be hit easily to the third baseman, and just nonchalantly picks it up and flips it across the diamond. You have to react, because you don't know the ball. It could be on your backhand side, it could be right there, you could be in the front hand. All that type of stuff. And the more we get away from that is just kind of the fun of developing, your athleticism of playing the game. But the players today, the answer is long-winded, because to Donnie's, it's the game unwatchable. You have, I think Mark will attest, the athletes have never been better. They've never been stronger. They don't ever hit the ball as far, and they don't ever throw as hard as now. You look at some of these guys, the number of players that are just ridiculously talented athletic players that fans will easily drop a lot of money to watch and see is there. Question is, are we going to develop it, or are we going to just fall in love with swing up into the air, hit the ball in the air, and the 2 times a game you might hit one out? Whoop-de-doo, and the fans will enjoy that. Or are we going to just watch a well-played game where strategy's involved, where pitchers have to pitch out of jams and all that other good stuff that raises and makes the October brand of baseball just the best brand of sport that there is.
Okay, Mark.
Well, you look at the analytics of the game, and the teams that talk about the analytics. And I was talking about Mike Matheny. I had Matheny as a player in high A ball. I was a pitching coach in Stockton. And Mike told me when he was where he was in St. Louis at the time, he said, "Hey, can you imagine?" He said, "They give me 3 lineups, 45 minutes before the game. I'm supposed to pick one." He says, "I can do that for $12 million. So, and so anyway, you go out there, but you talk about the strength of the athletes. The athletes are stronger today, but they also break down quicker too.
Yeah, and why is that though?
Well,
that's part of the development. That's part of the development.
Their tensile strength, we're wound tighter than they are actually. You don't believe that, but we used to hand grip Molons and stuff. They play with Xbox. Their thumbs are strong. So when you go into there, and here's my problem to go a step further. I don't know if it's a step further. It's just part of the whole scenario. Is when these kids come in and watch a baseball game, how many have their Xboxes with him. So in the stands. And, so I went to a game with Dad, but I didn't see anything because he was on his Xbox the whole time. Or you look at, David Price, he had to have surgery because he was playing too much Xbox, because, his carpal tunnel hit him. Oh my God. Wouldn't you think? I'd be darned.
Mark.
Isn't that amazing?
And you know what else? Social media. Players in the middle of the game are tweeting.
Well, he shouldn't be.
They're tweeting. Like a pitcher comes out of the game and he's tweeting. A hitter, gets a bad call by the umpire and he goes, looks at the film before he has to go on the field. He's tweeting. That was a ball. And they want to know what people are saying. It's like they can't even, the mind's not even in take care of business. Like the fact that I can't go that long without holding my phone. It's just, I'm surprised they're not in the outfield with the phone in their back pocket.
No, they probably are. Probably are. But I tell you what, it comes back to the old adage that I say, keep your powder dry. Oh, I'm just kidding you. Anyway.
Yeah.
but I remember Teddy, Teddy Simmons, and it was funny. He's pure baseball. And we're out there, shagging during BP, and Teddy's got a cigarette stuck in his doggone mitt. If you would go out there in the bullpen in April when it was cold, and you'd see all the guys running off the field, and everybody's wondering, man, look how fast they're running off the field. Yeah, they're wanting to get to their cigs. and so they go up the tunnel, light up, and you see smoke coming out from the bullpen.
That's great.
And then you see the other side, smoke coming out from the bullpen, from the tunnel.
So great.
So let me ask you guys
35-degree weather and smoke's flying all over the space. Where's that smoke coming from? From about 6 guys lighting up.
That is.
Mark, are they smoking more when they're losing or winning? Or does it matter?
Does not matter. I thought Teddy was going to put a whole pack in his mouth one day. Light up with a torch.
Ask the umpire for a light.
Yeah, really.
So then, let me ask you guys both this. What are your thoughts about 6 no-hitters in a short period of time? I mean, that to me, normally you're lucky to get 7 or on a high note, 7 or 8 in a year, but now 6 by the time we hit June. I mean, that just is too surreal.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of put it more fluky, just if you could go 6 years without another one. But, it's all I know is with no hitters is when you get the alert, someone's throwing a no hitter, I'm watching it. It's like, if you want to see if they're going to do it, and also, the John Means with all that he's gone through, you got to feel a great baseball story for him to throw a no-hitter. The sad thing is now he's hurt. Spencer Turnbull, now he's hurt, which it's interesting. The guys who do, at least 2 of the guys who do no-hitters, were we going back to the complete game theory? The fact that they were stretched. The other night, Freddie Peralta was no-hitting the Diamondbacks, and gave it up in the 8th inning. And but there you see Counsell was just seemed relieved he gave it up because you could just see him pacing. He was so nervous that his pitch count was getting up there and he was going to have a hard time justifying 125 or so pitch no-hitter.
Well, you got the 7th inning one too, Don't discount the
mad bump.
Yeah.
Right.
The bad thing is they didn't even make a rule before they should have said no 7th inning no hitters, or yeah, there will be 7. But so it's still up for grabs.
I guess they didn't think really. I guess they weren't thinking they were going to have to deal with it. They're probably hoping that we won't really worry. But they give him a complete game. They don't give him the no hitter. They give him the. It's just. Obviously, if you're, Mad Bum, or not that he's going to lobby for it, but his teammates in the organization will, because that's what you do. The guy did it. That was the length of the game. Why is he being penalized for that? But sure. It is what it is. It is what it is.
So
we know why they're doing it. I mean, bottom line, why are they doing 7 inning no hitters? Excuse me, no 7 inning double headers? they're frantically wanting in an age of a pandemic to play as many games as possible. That's, when I look at it, and that's how I looked last year, was my last full year at MLB.com. And that's how I looked at it, 60 games and whatever rules they're going to do, Zoom calls. It was about saving the season and saving the sport and whatever it took, obviously. And so it creates these little weird scenarios. But I think as we get hopefully past this pandemic, we won't even have these conversations. They'll just be footnotes in the next Bill James baseball abstract from 50 years from now.
Well, Mark, your interpretation of so many no-hitters in a short period of time, do you agree with Joe that it is a fluke, or because I know we can't take away and demean the accomplishment, even though it's been a little bit more frequent this year than it has in past years?
I've always felt that no-hitters were going to be thrown more in the early part of the season.
Did you?
Because the hitters weren't totally in tune.
Okay.
They are, don't get me wrong, but that's just a little point. The other factor is, Joe made a point. The Marlins are playing the Diamondbacks. Does that count?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but anyway, I'm just saying, there's variables. Yeah, those guys are throwing well, and if they're in the mood that night, and the time is right, and the other hitters, they don't want to swing for some reason. They took some bad Gatorade or something. I don't know. They walk up to the plate kind of squirmy, and I think I can get this guy out. I think I can get all 27 out. I'll be darned.
That's just surreal. All right, well,
it's a fluke. It's hard to guesstimate about a no-hitter, or a guy was throwing a one-hitter the other night. Somebody, he gave up the one hit in the 8th, and okay, he was headed for it. Should he get a no-hitter in the 7th, though? Sorry.
I guess
you have an addendum.
If Jacob deGrom doesn't throw one, then how easy was it to throw a no-hitter?
Really?
Because every night he goes out there, he's the guy that has the best chance in terms of stuff. I think he threw 7 innings the other day, and I think his slowest fastball was 99. Yeah. It's like he is just in a ridiculously, run that he's on right now.
Right.
He's a dandy. He really is.
Yeah.
So on a recent Marlins Zoom call, Adam Duvall says the hitters are not on an even playing field. He says this year's balls are spinning differently, breaking balls, fastball. So is more offense good for baseball?
Well, I think offensively, they've always wanted the offense because of the DH. They started that, and that was the main reason. But, you have pitchers that are breaking down, and now you have to carry a 15-man staff via a 40-man, the other team, they call it, or whatever, or the IT team. I don't even know what they call it anymore.
Right.
But they can go down there and they can grab these pitchers. And so the Cardinals had 2 guys or 3 guys that go down, so they're getting them up. And like you said, Joe, Scott, you don't know if they're ready yet. And all of a sudden they get shoved between the lines. They may have a really good outing, but the next 2 they get hammered.
Right.
Then the fans go, "Oh, get him out of here." And whether they can handle all those insecurities or not, because it's a mental game. It really is. I mean, it's physical, but it's also more mental than it is anything. So that plays with anybody's head as far as pitcher, hitter, fielder, whatever.
Scott, is offense good for the game? Of course. I mean, we love the great pitching matchup, and then whoever can break through. Those speak for themselves, and that's usually what playoff baseball becomes, when 2 really phenomenal starters go against each other, and who's going to kind of strike first. I think it's like what I was saying earlier, the lack of quality approach. That mentality is where these are hittable pitches, yet it's the approach is just so stupid that it's not even, it's like, just why don't you just try to hit the ball? What is this? Who do you think you are? You're not a power hitter. Like Mark was saying, the best you're going to do is hit the warning track anyway. Yet you're trying to launch the ball instead of doing something strategic to help your team win a game. And so what Adam's saying is, and again, Mark's opinion on this especially, I see more guys doing this than I've ever seen. Like they do this like 73 times, and next thing you know, the ball is a wiffle ball, going to the plate. And like some of the stories you're reading is it's in plain sight. It's like no one's even hiding it. And so how much more than just a hat full of rosin or pine tar are we seeing, and are you seeing that, because it's pretty clear that every time you're going to your hat all the time, and then you got the ball, and then you throw a breaking ball. So what's going on? And that's what I think Adam Duvall's talking about. Why is the ball all of a sudden being a wiffle ball after you're doing whatever it is you're doing?
I don't know that it is a wiffle ball, because to make a ball move, all you want to do is have 3 or 4 inches. That's the same with Gaylord Perry. You can't make a ball move a lot. I mean, it doesn't sail in there like a wiffle ball. I mean, you can't see it. It's an aspirin. And when they throw a breaking ball, or when I throw a hard slider and you're guessing, and you ain't going to hit it. You're not going to hit it. And so that's just the way it is. I think the thing with all the doctoring the ball up, I don't know why in the world, because just a little dab will do. You have pine tar to keep your hand, but rosin, see, nobody knows how to really use a rosin bag. Actually, a rosin bag, you have to put rosin on, you have to rub your hands together, it heats them, and also then you have a film of pine tar on your hand.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same thing. People say, oh, he's got pine tar in his glove. Well, I did put pine tar in my glove as everybody else. I want to just get a little bit just to grip the ball. It's not going to make the ball run and sail and do everything. That's a different song and dance. When you throw a spitter, you throw it on the dry seams, and it slips out of your fingers, and then it dives. That's also very hard on your arm.
Yeah.
These kids can't handle hard on your arm. I mean, shit, they got a cut nail, they're out. I mean, damn.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, don't tell me that this ball is moving all over God creation place. It ain't.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't know why the commissioner said that, or whoever else jumped on the bandwagon. Maybe they had to write something for some reason, but that's a bunch of crap. I mean, because I've tried to make a ball move, and I've tried to throw spitters, and I've tried to do all this other stuff, but you have to know what that thing is going to do. If you don't know between the lines what it's going to do, it's going to be launched. It's going to be hard because it didn't move. You can say, well, I held it like a spinner, and it's going to just drop and fall off the bottom right here. It doesn't. And then you better cover up, because you have to have an asbestos suit on as a pitcher, because it's going to get so damn hot out there on you from that ball flying by you, and you hope it does not hit you and put a hole through you. I'm telling you, people don't understand. They say that ball's moving like a wiffle ball. They're full of shit. They are. They're full of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All you take.
So it might just be.
So
Mark, it might just be the hitter better do a better job. If you're a hitter with a 40% K rate anyway,
the hitter better better learn how to hit
job.
and have a level swing rather than an upper swing. Good grief.
Well,
come on. It's simple.
You guys have a great segue. That's what I love about you too. Leading me to my next point. Thank you very much for the nice segues and transitions, because now that leads me to my next point. That MLB is going to check pitchers for foreign substances for 8 to 10 times per game.
That's stupid. They want to speed the game up? Sure, baby.
Well, Joe?
I mean, it's hard to even, Mark nailed it. But yeah, I don't know what they think they're going to get.
Yeah.
What are you going to get? And I'm going to just use the name as I'll use Garrett Cole. You already brought Jacob deGrom. Okay, Garrett Cole on the most popular team in the sport, right? Maybe the most popular team in any sport, the New York Yankees, is throwing a no-hitter. Yet the umpires in the 8th inning detect that what's Garrett Cole doing? And next thing you know, what are you going to eject Garrett Cole in the middle? And I'm using him as an example.
Right.
Are they going to note one of the most popular pitchers in the game on the most popular team in the middle of a potential historic game was doctoring the baseball.
Yeah.
And they're gonna, I mean, what's that going to do? What are the headlines going to be? The sports whole, what's it going to be? I mean, it's like, I find that interesting. Like, what are you going to do? Issue a warning?
I don't know. I'm at a loss.
And again, it's just an example. If it gets out there, why is he saying Garrett Cole?
Talk about speeding up the game. And then you talk about, you have they stop the game, to see if the guy's safe or out. So that takes up 3 minutes, about 8 times. So that's 24 minutes right there, of a game. And it adds on to more commercials for, Budweiser and everybody else. That's cool, But there's so many variables. They've got the thing out at the California rule. That's called the California rule, as far as I'm concerned, because I saw that rule happen 13 years ago, in Arizona when I was coaching amateur ball, actually. And I said, what in the hell is this? So they put the runner on second, the whole thing like that. And that was to speed the thing up because they had teams waiting to play on that field. That was why they did it. This one, I guess they want it over with. But you know what? Makes more sense. If you haven't got any pitching, they'd have to have 20 pitchers on a list if they played a real baseball game nowadays. So, good grief. Broken left and right.
I used to be, because I'm more of an NL guy at heart, and I used to be anti-DH, for National League, whatever. And then it just, to the point of, especially covering baseball and seeing games that won't end sometimes, especially I've covered like 2 or 3 100-loss seasons, and you're watching a team that doesn't have any pitching, and you're in July, and that the end of the year is going to be just 5-hour games every night. And I'm like, and my pitcher that's halfway decent gets hurt because I got hit by a pitch bunting or hurt his hammy running to first. I'm like, just to save pitching, and especially the price of pitching, and it's like I became a fan of the DH for that reason alone. And to your point of the extra inning rule, it's the same thing. I covered at least 2 or 3 20-inning games, 18-inning games. And they're not fun from a standpoint there. And I'm sure as a player, I saw Kevin Slowey throw 8 innings of relief and get a win at Citi Field against the Mets to go in a 20-inning game on Sunday getaway day. And it's like, the man on second rule makes some sense in those regards, because when you think of that, because the next night might also go 20 innings. There's no guarantee that, we got our 1 20-inning game of the year or 1 15-inning game of the year. And the pitching is already coming out of the game in the 4th inning anyway. And so do you want to have these people that are crying for that be prepared for more wear and tear on pitching, which is the commodity people have the fewest of. So, yeah, ideally, would I rather see the game settled like a traditional game? Yes. Practically, and if I'm an owner or if I'm a fan of a team, do I want to lose my best reliever or whatever because of this? Because what happens every extra inning game? If it goes past 11, what happens? 4 roster removes. Because somebody got extended, somebody got hurt in the 14th, because by then it's probably raining, and your guys are getting hurt in a muddy field, and so you're depleting you just go there, you see a demoralized team even after a win, and because the manager's freaking out, the GM's going nuts, the farm director, you got everyone scrambling, the traveling secretary's got 14 planes reservations going, getting people in from God knows where. And for the game and for fans, it's not fun. And I don't think that the young fan with a shorter attention span wants to really sit around for 16, 17 inning games.
All right, so when you look at the cumulative effect that we're talking about initially, with the pitchers being checked 8 to 10 times, adding to the length of the game, right? And then, of course, we talk about, Joe, that you mentioned the extra inning rule, right? So, Mark, I was just going over Joe, the cumulative effect of the 8 to 10 times, which I think we both can say that is a laugher. I'm getting that from you guys, right? And now the the extra inning rule, that to me doesn't feel really right about the nature of the game anyways, isn't it? When you look at both of those two?
Mark, you want to take it?
Uh, I had a little call right there, but you're talking about the nature of the game as far as with the man on second, how that's going to pan out in the long run.
Yeah.
Well, here,
Yeah, to me, I know that they brought it back for this year, I believe, Joe, because of the pandemic, but I was wondering whether that'll be a permanent change.
here you got playoffs and World Series too, so the same thing's going to apply, I guess, right?
No, they waive it for that. I
Oh,
think
the
they
way
waive it for that. Yeah, I think they waive it for that. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
fair.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
well, you know, I can see a little bit of this with the runner on second because I was experienced with it. I've experienced it in amateur ball out in Arizona. I mean, I coached 18 years professionally. And then I did amateur ball for about 10 years. I had college teams, the whole 9 yards. We didn't do that in college at the time, but we did do it in the lower, you know, the 18U and under for the runners on second. Yes, it does save arms, obviously. Yes, it speeds the game up. It's, you know, it gives everybody a directive that this ball game is not going to go over 4 hours, you know. I mean, it's not going to go 6 and 8, you know, or the next day or whatever, and things of that nature. I can see that. You know, I have to give in a little bit myself. The only reason I give in is because if you look at the pitchers, though, see, because you haven't got the pitchers that go the distance. You know, you really don't. And so you hurt a lot of kids out there. You know, you hurt a lot of arms. And a lot of these, I say kids, these veterans know how, hey, had enough, you know, and, you know, they know when enough is enough and they can protect themselves. These kids can't protect themselves. They're not really prepared to protect themselves. So
they're trying to impress. You're 100% right. And that's the point, Scott. It's like, yes, in terms of purity, but there's a reality. And the reality is, look, the Marlins came into this season with Sandy Alcantara, who in 2019 threw like 197 innings. Pablo Lopez threw 111, and that was it. Sixto Sanchez last year threw like 30 innings. Pablo threw like 40 innings, and those guys. Okay, well, their rotation this year, I said it when they were all healthy. I had no idea how the Miami Marlins starters were going to cover this season. Now, all of a sudden, you got all of them hurt, except for Sandy Alcantara. And Pablo's being pushed back anytime they could rest, give him another day. They're giving it to him. And this team, now they just lost tonight. They're like 8, they're going to fall like 9 under or 9 out or whatever. It's like, are they in it? And if they are in it, that pitching is going to be taxed even more because you're going to put more stress on them because you think you have to keep running them out there because they give you the best chance to win. And we're not even, you know, close to July yet. Right. And now you want to, on top of that, go to unlimited extra innings with an offense that can't score runs anyway. You know, it's like, you know, okay, if you're fine with that, you know, you want to break your inventory and rush your kids and then say how boring the game is and how there's no pitching, then go that route. Because I tell you, it almost makes more sense if I'm playing a team that's not very good and I'm a first place team and I'm looking at a long game, I could throw that game. I could throw a position player out there and just end it. Because sometimes it's losing that game in 11 makes much more sense for you than to try to win it in 20. And next thing you know, you lost your closer, your setup guy, and your season's gone. You know, it's so a lot of these factors, the game's evolved. And I think the commissioner's there where he sees it in that regard. And he wants to speed it up. He doesn't want the 6-hour game. You know, I think that's more of the commissioner's office. But from my practicality and what Mark's talking about, protecting these players, right? Because he's right. If you asked any of these young Marlin pitchers who haven't even thrown a pitch in the big leagues, hey, you get the ball night, you have to throw 7 innings in relief. Oh, I'll do it, coach. Yeah, don't trust me. Yes, I can do it. You know, they'll try. And then, you know, you're completely negligent because you might be ruining a career.
You know,
Yeah,
When
well,
the arms are, the health of the arms are at the whim of the coach or the organization, whatever they do. And, that's all, that should be all mapped out as far as protecting those arms. I mean, even when I was coaching, it was still mapped out pretty heavily.
right.
Not to,
Oh yeah, it is. But then like 4 of their prospects all got hurt. That's the thing with the Marlins specifically. It's like now what? Now what? You're down a full level. You lost your 3 top, basically your two or 3 top pitching prospects.
yeah.
So in light of what you guys have said, okay, let's just go to the 7-inning doubleheaders, Joe. Obviously, we've been seeing a lot of these the last 2 years, and we're talking about protecting arms because right now that appears to be a theme. Do you think that the 7-inning doubleheader rule will continue beyond this year? Because bear in mind that you had the extra man on second to start extra innings. Now you feel bad for the pitchers that get the unfortunate loss that they ended up getting by circumstance. So there are some things that work against them. But when you look at the fact that you don't want them to be marathons, so you've got the MLB extra inning rule, which I equivocated to the hockey shootout in the 5-minute overtime, and everything goes back to normal in the postseason. I think that's a relatively fair comparison. So let's talk about the 7-inning doubleheaders, and then we'll go ahead and transition about the universal DH as well, because again, that's another way to protect arms. Let's talk about 7-inning doubleheaders, and then connect the dots with the universal DH. Or whatever one of you wants to start, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think the CBA will determine that, obviously, and I could see it. The beauty in South Florida is they got a, so they don't have to worry about the rain out, and you hope after this year, knock on wood, the rest of this year, there's no more pandemic cancellation of games, and but for the market, St. Louis, it rains. A lot of those teams in the AL Central, there's bad weather there. It gets down to does the fan want to, on the occasions of doubleheaders, they're usually split, right? They usually will do the day, night type thing to get 2 gates. I could see it saying 7. I could see it. I could see them negotiating 7.
The other factor is to take it a different route. I don't know anymore, and I've asked, but the cost of a ticket is how it's dumped into this whole scenario. I heard, when they first started, it was like, oh my gosh, it's spring training tickets are like out of sight. And then now you're looking at this ticket in Busch Stadium. Well, Busch Stadium is the number 2 draw next to Los Angeles. Los Angeles has 15 million. St. Louis has 2.5 million. And it's metropolitan. I'd say St. Louis does a hell of a job of doing that. And I believe they had over 30,000 the other night. And, their average was a little bit over 41,000, somewhere in the neighborhood. So are you going to get that with the price of the new ticket? And, from the pandemic, there's so many scenarios, and then you put the double header in there, and then all these other things that top onto it. The price of the hot dog, the price of parking, $65 in New York, to park a car, and you only get shot at twice walking in the door, and then, whatever. But I'm just saying.
You may have answered that question. You may have said we might be going 9-inning doubleheaders just for the economics alone. I was speaking more for.
That's funny. Joe, you say that's funny. That's pretty good because, in college they did the 9 and the 7. They used to do the old 9-inning and then the 7-inning. Or the 7.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but the 7 and then the 9.
Yeah, that could be a solution. That could be part of it, but then it could be the price of 1 ticket. You maybe just do away with that. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So we're solving the practicality and the economics right here tonight, Scott, on your show.
Listening to this stuff, this is no.
Well, Joe, I'll be more than happy to nominate you for the next commissioner. You are Bart. One will be the commissioner.
I don't want that headache.
That's right. He's living a good life doing a part-time thing. So
I take the early retirement.
You're a smart man. So with that said, let's connect the dots with the universal DH. Don Mattingly and everybody said that's inevitable because before it comes.
It should be here now. The fact that despite of both sides to not negotiate it in because it's going to be part of the season, it's ridiculous that it's not. And the thing about it is, I was told all the way up almost to opening day, it still could happen. So literally, these teams were going through spring training, not knowing how to construct their roster National League teams, because even though everyone was saying no, no, no publicly and whispering, you're still hearing it could have happened, and obviously it didn't. And why it didn't is ridiculous, and there'll be a DH.
Okay, Mark, what's your take on the universal DH?
I liked hitting with the DH. I was the first pitcher with Kansas City to hit under the DH rule. So there you go.
Hey, you know a guy who could hit under the DH rule as long as he's hitting in Colorado? Remember Mike Hampton? He used to love.
Yeah, he's a good hitter. Yeah, he's a good hitter.
Yeah, he liked to go to Colorado. Forget the ERA. He just like swinging the bat up in the high altitude. This guy loved it.
Yep.
Yep.
Sure.
Maybe we ought to seek out Mike Hampton. So let's go to a couple of more interesting Marlin topics. And Joe, obviously you've been around a little bit longer. What about Derek Jeter as an executive? You know, he came from the Yankee system where, he ended up being part of the player development. I covered the Yankees in '82 when they shipped every prospect out for proven players. But yet Derek Jeter has a process that he's talking about development. What's your take on the job that Derek Jeter has done, Joe, as an executive for the Miami Marlins?
I think he's done very well in this regard. Okay, he came in, he had to make the tough decision to break up the 17 team, which underperformed and had Stanton, who had the MVP year, hit 59 homers, and that was a remarkable season that I covered. To see someone flirting with a 60 homer, especially playing in Marlins Park with balls that weren't as juiced as they were after the 17 season. But he had to make that tough call, and I agreed it was the right call, as painful as it is to do a rebuild. And he's in a very fickle market that's been through rebuilds and has a hard time, getting people to the stadium and generating revenues. But what I'll say about Derek is he's very disciplined, and he doesn't make hasty decisions, which are very good qualities. He's got a plan to build through the farm system, and he is building a very solid farm system. And it just takes a little time, and there are no guarantees that once even these good prospects get to the big leagues, you still don't know if they're going to win. Now, probably the two biggest things from an economic standpoint, he got naming rights deal and a new TV deal, which is the biggest hindrance he had that the previous regime gave him was, a laughable TV deal of maybe even 17 million a year, which in this day and age. And, as someone who traveled and has been to all the ballparks, except for the new Texas ballpark, and being in St. Louis and seeing what the St. Louis, the nation or whatever they call that, they're right outside the ballpark where there's some restaurants and their Hall of Fame, that attraction that the ballpark brings in and fans that they could do. And the fact that the Cardinals own that, when Atlanta owns all that land, the Battery right around Truist Park, it's a gold mine. Marlins Park and now Lone Depot Park has nothing around. They need to create some sort of environment that will let a fan, especially if you're coming north to south, meaning Broward County or Palm Beach County, which is even a further drive, no one wants to drive to Miami to begin with. And when you do, if you could at least get there mid-afternoon for a 7:00 game, to go to a sports bar, have a drink, or relax, maybe an early dinner, go to the game. And then if you want to beat traffic by, hanging around a little bit after the game and then head home, there's nothing like that around Lone Depot. So they're greatly challenged there. But the fact that he got the new TV deal, which is going to infuse at least $50 million a year, the naming rights is going to infuse another 7, 8, whatever, 9 million a year. And at least that foundation will be in place moving forward. And they are very much from a money-making standpoint trying to make Lone Depot Park, a lot more areas for fans to do some of the things I was talking about. But the disadvantage that the Marlins have is always going to be financial right now, where they just are going to have to work with a more limited budget until, the fans will say, oh, trade for Lindor and sign him. And then when I bring up to the fans, are you prepared to put 30,000 a night in the ballpark? Oh, no, you can't expect that. Well, St. Louis does, and so they can sign Arenado. That matters. It matters. It's a give and take. These markets that can sign these players, Milwaukee could sign Yelich to that big extension because they will put 40,000 in the stands. And is Miami willing to do that? And obviously you got to build that trust, and it takes time. But it's a real challenge for him in that regard to generate a lot of money. And I'm someone who would have had opportunities to cover other markets and such. Yeah, could I have been a Yankee writer and been the millionth, young writer or whatever to cover the Yankees? Or did I want to try to build something here in South Florida? And that's one reason, a big reason I wanted to stay here was to build something and be part of seeing something grow here. And I want that day to come where people talk about Miami like they do about St. Louis, because they share a spring training site. Yet when the Cardinals play in a typical year, they'd have 4,000 at Roger Dean Stadium. And when the Marlins play, they'd have 1,000. Why is those numbers flipped in spring training? So Jeter is dealing with these challenges of how to attract fans, along with how do you build a competitive team. And I like the fact that they're using their farm system in their pitching. Hitting can be traded for or signed, accordingly.
You nailed it. It's hard to, but the minor league system and the farm system is everything the great teams build around, and they really do. And you can go right down the list with them. And as long as you have that goal and that plan like Jeter does, and he's a baseball man, and he has to have other people surrounded around him that know other things other than baseball. But as long as he sticks with that plan and he gets the quality that he needs and the mega ballpark comes around, eventually, like St. Louis, that's a gorgeous stadium, with what they've got around it, and then, you've got, Milwaukee's got a beautiful stadium. I was there the second year that the new one was built, and it's magnificent. And all these new ballparks, just really fans are in awe, just to sit there and watch a game and watch how everything moves in major league play the right way. But it doesn't happen until you have a minor league system that is in place to develop. And that's like Kansas City when they first developed the academy. And then, we came on really fast to get in the playoffs in 76 and 77, if you think about it. And then, the Royals Academy, and then, everything, it graduated fast under Ewing Kauffman. So the ownership means a lot, the right ownership, and knowing where to find those bucks. So,
yeah.
Well, one of the good off-season hirings that I really liked with the Marlins, it was bringing in general manager Kim Ng. Kim is one of the more, you talk about an incredible background. Not only did she work with MLB, but with the Yankees and the Dodgers. So, Joe, what are your thoughts about the hiring of Kim Ng?
Oh, yeah, highly deserved, long overdue. And, she's, mixed in. She replaced Michael Hill, who had the title of, President of Baseball Operations. I think that was the official title. It slipped my mind. And they gave her the GM title, not the fancier title. Because Kim, being new in that role, it's good. It's a good role to have that without the responsibility of being over everything. And she's, she's a people person. She's a decision maker. She's a leader. She has an evaluation background, player development background, scouting background. She's been on all parts. She's worked for the league, so she is, she's learning on the fly. because she got literally hired, at the end of October, early November. I can't remember when. Normally, your GM knows by September, who probably is going to stay or go. She's kind of walking in. So this is her chance to get to learn it all. It's going to get more challenging for her because the job just never ends. Because I think what you'll find if you're an executive in baseball is you could map it out, you could write it out. You could say, I got this guy. Oh, we got so and so. But invariably, I always say this, like when you go into spring training or into a season, someone's going to overperform, or someone that you didn't expect to is going to overperform. Someone you were counting on is going to underperform. Someone will get hurt. There'll always be quirky stuff, and you're seeing that. Like the Sixto Sancho is going to be the Marlins' big stud, young pitcher. He's been hurt. Trevor Rogers became the stud young pitcher. Kim's got to deal with all that. And then she has to be smart enough to know, am I going to give an extension to this player, to that player? Is this real? Is this a short sample size? That all it's all going to hit her really fast. And the challenges of a 162 game season after not having a 162 game season is something. The manager situation, Donnie's in the last year of his contract. These are all things of the direction that she's going to have to be, big part of in the next few months.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, what are your thoughts about Kim Ng?
He pretty much nailed it. I know I never met her, but I've read enough about her that she can really do her thing. And there's a lot more women coming into the picture now. Matter of fact, I don't mean to get off the subject, but women baseball is actually becoming, it's trying to hit a chord right now. I was in Cuba about 2 years ago, and I watched the lady, Donna Cohen, give a talk on women's baseball. Matter of fact, she had some of the old women's uniforms from Cuba, where it actually originally had started, which I did not know. But, women play a big part, and, she's going to put her foot down and take care of her boys. She's going to be, there's going to be Mama right there, Mama Bear, and she's going to come in and take care of her boys, and she's going to try to take care of the situation with Miami just as well. But she's fresh blood right there, and she wants to do well. I know she works her butt off probably. So.
Oh yeah, and she has to carry the weight of. I mean, she's on the Today Show before the season. It's much bigger than being a GM of a baseball team. She is carrying the weight because in the perception, if she fails, what does that do to opportunity for other women? As they're making so. She's up for the job. She was the complete logical first choice, and she will not be the last. She will not be the last. And I think though the age of the GM or the president of baseball ops, I think you're seeing more and more tiered layer of how these organizations are going to start running themselves. It's not it's yes there's the Theo Epsteins and the Brian Cashmans and those Hall of Fame GMs that have done it a certain way with kind of a one voice. I think you're going to see more collaborative efforts where department heads, your smartest baseball person may not be the GM, might be the assistant GM, might be someone more uncomfortable, because the GM also have to be the one talking to the media. There's some of these other ones are much better behind the scenes. They might be brilliant evaluators. They might be brilliant developers. And so that the role of the GM isn't necessarily to be the eyes to say, yeah, that's the better player because I say it's the better player. That's the better player because I know who to go to get the information to tell me that's the better player. And I'll give you a quick example, Scott. When I was speaking about Jack McKeon, when Jack would talk about when he was the GM in San Diego, when Jack, who was a very good evaluator, he would sit there and he'd say if they were going to make a trade, he would send his top two lieutenants out to go look at the player, and then after he got back, he would go look at him individually. And let's say there'd be the argument, and this is what only Jack could say, he goes, first guy comes back, love the guy. Okay, next guy, hate the guy. Then Jack goes and watches, and Jack's like, I'm breaking the tie. And I'm going to say who it's going to be. And the reason I'm going to say it's who's to be, because if that player don't work out, it's my butt that's on the line that's going to be responsible for it. So that is kind of the older way of where the GM had to probably be your best evaluator. these days, I think a lot of GMs are in those positions are more just delegators, not to diminish that it can't evaluate, but the ability to kind of run the room and know how to get the best information without necessarily having to also be the most, have to be the final. Because keep this in mind too, especially with the Miami Marlins. Derek Jeter was running the show, so we'll just kind of leave it at that.
Well, with that said, Joe, and I know you've talked about, the fact that I believe that Miami can potentially support Major League Baseball. I'm sure that they got the best deal they ended up getting in Miami, but we all know full well if you're living north, Broward and Palm Beach County, if you could have made it centrally located, that would have been better. But Joe, when you look at things overall, can Miami support MLB baseball, knowing that there was baseball, that there was a football on the side of the Orange Bowl, for half as many fans?
I will say this, Scott, and, being down here, there's much more passion among young fans than I've ever seen in all the years I've been around the team. So that's very encouraging in that regard. Now, whether they're going to be ticket buyers, we're going to find out soon enough because, the Marlins are coming home now. They've been on the road a while. At some point, the attendance is going to, they get the green light to have more fans in the stands. And, we're in summer now, and do fans or does the Miami public, which has been cooped up, like pretty much everywhere else, are they ready to put 15, 20,000 as a baby step and then take it to more than that? So yes, does it come down to winning? Ideally, yes, but I love that, Miami only supports a winner. Well, baseball is, I grew up, watching the Mets when they weren't winning much, but there was no bigger fan in baseball than me. I didn't need, I get it, but, it's, you love the sport and you love your team, and if they win, that's a benefit. But, for what other sport gives you every night of the week for 6 months, a game? You lose a heartbreaker, well, you get them tomorrow, and you turn TV on, and they're on again. And then you might see something you never saw. You might see a no-hitter, which you haven't seen in a week, right?
Right, for sure.
Well, we know that Montreal is not one of Mark Littell's favorite baseball cities. I love listening to your stories about Montreal, Mark.
There's too many.
Yeah, I know. I can imagine. So it's safe to say Mark Littell would never endorse Montreal to get another game, right?
I like their food, but that's about it.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I know we've covered a lot of ground. So with that said, I do, Mark, you're on every time. And I want you to talk about your books and The Nutty Buddy because it's a classic. Joe was hearing it for the first time. And then Joe, I want you to talk about everything you're doing as well. It's such a privilege having the two of you guys on the broadcast. So, Mark, you got a few books and you got a Nutty Buddy. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I got a couple books out, and I got a third one coming out hopefully this week. It's called What's Up Ramrod. It's got a little question mark on the end of it, and it's 332 pages. It's got 106 images in it. My first two books were not as big, but they were pretty fun to read, I thought, and what I've heard. But first book was on the eighth day God made baseball. Second book was called Country Boy Conveniently Wild. And then this third book, hopefully come out, hopefully Thursday now, What's Up Ramrod. I'm really looking forward to it. It's about my coaching days. I actually did call my players Ramrod, so, and Ramrod did originate from Rowdy Yates, who was the Ramrod or second in command next to Mr. Favor on Rawhide. So that's where I grew up in that era of watching Rawhide. And so I called everybody, hey, Ramrod. And the reason they say, why does he call me Ramrod? He don't know your name. He didn't know your name. So anyway, it's a fun book, and it actually starts off with a boot heel hanging. A true story. My uncle was at that hanging. The last one, public hanging in the United States in New Madrid County, Missouri. And he was an educator. but he told great stories, and I tell the story about that and researched it. And then I go into Australia. I have 6 chapters on Australia because I coached in Australia 4 years as I was doing, I had 18 years professionally with different organizations. And then the Nutty Buddy is what it is. It's a protective cup. Yes, I take shots in the nads at 90 miles an hour or more, 4.5 feet out. Yes, I use a laser to make sure it hits me in the nads. The other thing is that I have 5 sizes. I have hammer, boss, hog, trophy, and of course, Mongo. I do wear Mongo, and it works, and it's the best cup out on the market. I've won 5 awards on it, and I'm an idiot. So it's the best cup because it is comfortable. It takes a beating. It's made out of 124R Lexan, bullet resistant glass. And it has nothing to do with it. It's all the design right here.
So how can they find the Nutty Buddy, Mark?
You can go to nuttybuddy.com. And when I put my website up, it'll be Captain Ramrod this time, captainramrod.com. It's not up yet, but it will be. So on the books.
So now you got it, Joe. We'll have to see what size you want.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So with that said, Joe, man on second, did you create that because of the extra inning rule? I kind of wonder about that.
Okay. Quick background I covered the Marlins from 2002 to 2020 for MLB.com. Took the early retirement, and then riding off into the sunset. But also, I was like, okay, I could do a little blog or whatever. But I was like, let me try to do something a little original and a little more ambitious. Because one of the things when I first hooked up with MLB.com, everyone said there's no way that it was going to survive. People said back in 2002, no one can make money on the internet. And all MLB.com did in those years was become the first website to develop the streaming technology, which everyone uses these days, and become a multi-billion-dollar company. And in my own small way, I'm very thankful to be to come in at the right place at the right time. But I like the challenge of doing something that people said couldn't be done. And so I was like, well, I've always kind of thought Florida was a little bit of a sleeping giant, that, so many great players are either from here or reside here or retire here. You have the spring training sites, you have minor league sites, you have very good college baseball here, very good prep players. So I was like, let me kind of be more than just the Marlins guy and do something more. So it's kind of a website, manonsecondbaseball.com. I have my own podcast, which we've just launched. It's only like 3 months old, so it hasn't been too long I've been doing this. And so I'm bringing like what Mark it just speaks to is that there's a conversation of baseball that I think is being lost, because I think people are wrapped up in a lot of the secondary stuff, a lot of the frivolous stuff. And so there's still some really good baseball stories to be told. There's some good insights. There's evaluations that need to be, accurately reported. And I basically am providing baseball through my lens. And okay, how did it become man on second? Well, I have a very talented, creative son who said, well, Dad, you're retired, but you're 60 years old. You're not really, the game's not really over for you. So your career is kind of like in your second, and it's kind of an extra innings. So you're on second base right now, in extra innings. So the game's not over for me, but I'm in extra innings, but I'm on second base. And so man on second baseball is man on second. I am the metaphor for man on second. And I'm just hoping, and my vision would be to try to monetize it, but to have a Marlins writer, a Rays writer, a college writer, a draft writer. And, someone I'm about to do a story on is Logan Gilbert's father. Logan Gilbert's the prospect for the Seattle Mariners who won his first game yesterday. His father was there. I talked to him on the phone tonight. We're going to talk in the next couple of days, and I'm going to bring that perspective of a parent, that's got a kid who just broke into the big leagues, who's a top 100, top 50 or whatever prospect in this sport. And you're going to see more of that. If I break stories along the way, I'm not going to apologize for stepping on anyone's toes. I broke a bazillion stories in my career, and I'm still gonna, be aggressive and cover the Marlins and tell people what I think. And I think I have a voice to be heard. And Man on Second is kind of my platform.
Beautiful. And you know what's so nice about your Man on Second platform, and I've been able to work with Mark, with Joe here, is that the South Florida Tribune, we have a lot of baseball that comes in, content from Florida Atlantic University, Nova University, University of Florida, as well as South Florida. So I'm able to somehow find a way to get Joe that material. I'll be doing some stuff with the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. So it's nice that I could provide Joe with some of the material as well. So, like I said, I met Joe through a Zoom call, when we were doing this like last year, right, Joe? And then all of a sudden, what's so cool about it is when we finally get to the ballpark, we got to know Joe even better. And now here we are having a whale of a time doing this whole thing. So, and like I said, and little to find out what we were old Tampa Tribune guys as well. It comes into full circle. Just so you folks realize this is the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morganroth. Glad to be joined by Mark Littell, my baseball analyst and lifelong friend, and Joe Frisaro as well. And one thing I want you to get out of this broadcast is not only are you getting a steady dose of Miami Marlins coverage, but you're also getting great viewpoints about the way that baseball has evolved in this era, whether we've talked about the foreign substances and the 7-inning doubleheaders, the universal DH, and so forth. So we're trying to give you really what we call a complete picture of baseball, not only from a local standpoint, but a national standpoint. So there is a lot to be gained out of this. To access this broadcast, you can go to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. You'll get all the broadcasts that we do have as well. Yeah, you can find me. Joe, let people know how they can find you on Twitter as well.
Yeah, you can just go to the @ManOn2ND. That's my Twitter handle, and my traditional one that I've kind of more known from my MLB days, just at my name, Joe, Frisaro. So appreciate it, Scott. It's been great. It's been great talking to Mark and introduced to him. And thanks for all you did tonight.
Yeah, let me just point out one other thing before we end the broadcast. You can find us on our Twitter at Tribune South. You can also find the broadcast at www.southfloridatribune.com. So there's lots of different ways to find it. So, yeah, Joe, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. Mark, as always, what can I tell you? You're the best. I love it.
It's a pleasure as well. I enjoyed the visit tonight with you, Joe, and getting to know you, and Scott, as always. So, thank you.
So
I appreciate all those who've made this sport, and very much. Thank you.
So, but meanwhile, on behalf of Joe Frisaro and Mark Littell, my name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the Sports Exchange. And until the next time, be safe, everybody. Get vaccinated. God bless. Okay, take care. Thanks again, guys. Appreciate you so much. Good night.
Sure. Thanks, Joe.
Oh, Mark, appreciate it. Good luck with the books. I'm going to go order one.